Dear learners, by now you must have got an idea about research process, research philosophy, and different approaches taken by researchers in tourism and hospitality management research. In today's session, we are going to work out on research design, research strategy, and appropriate research design for tourism and hospitality management discipline. So let me start with a small story. In universities, students join PhD, and while they join, they submit a research proposal, and while going through this research proposal, we understand that many of these proposals carry a superficial information. It is not a kind of appropriate way they have prepared the proposal. So we have to work hard to make it in a proper shape. Why this is happening? The reason is lack of understanding how to design the research proposal or the background knowledge of conducting the research. Let us start with the research design here. Research design means how you are going to carry out your research or having a proper understanding about different courses of action which involves in conducting the research. And the best research design framework which we find here is of Saunders. Saunders, he explained it in a diagram called research onion. And in this session, in today's session, we will be discussing different areas in connection with that particular research design framework proposed by Saunders. So the first aspect here is you have to define the research philosophy that you will be using. That is the outer layer. That means I told you realism, that you are looking at the problem, you are approaching the problem externally, or second, relativism, where you are becoming part of that issue, you investigate that issue in detail. Then come positivism, a natural scientist perspective. You are going ahead with a specific hypothesis and you have already a theory proposed by somebody. You have operational variables at your end and you want to prove the hypothesis. At the end, the results that you get is summarized, and then comes pragmatist approach. In pragmatist approach, you adopt interpretivism. Interpretivism, here it uses pragmatist approach. Here we approach the problem objectively and subjectively. And then comes subjectivism, approaching the problem in a detailed manner. So the outer layer of the research design which explains what philosophical stand the researcher is going to adopt. So when we look into this layer, I would like to highlight, so one is realism, which we have already seen, and the second aspect here is positivism. We have seen also objectivism, subjectivism, interpretivism and pragmatism in the previous class. You can quickly review what we discussed in the previous class to get a detailed insight on this particular philosophical framework. Now coming into the second layer, we have to adopt either deductive approach or inductive approach. So what do you understand by deductive, or what is the difference with the inductive? As I told you before, certain theories already introduced in management or psychology that we borrow into tourism context, and these theories have certain concepts, and to identify the concept we have to operationalize variables. So these variables indeed capture a particular phenomena and we analyze it scientifically. So the survey method that we commonly use to collect the data and then at the end we end up with the result by accepting or rejecting hypothesis. So, in a nutshell, we are like taking into the bottom of the pyramid. That means we are digging, we are going into the ultimate result, and that result is important for us. And when we enter into the inductive approach, in inductive approach we have to collect information through different formats, and the researcher's stand is different perspectives are important to study. A particular theory may not work here properly because humanities subject we have subjectivity at the highest level. Individuals have different perspectives. So, we have to note different perspectives and we have to compile it, and we have to generate a new theory, or we may come out with in detail results that we call inductive approach. So, when we go into the field, our observations about a particular phenomena is important, and then we interact with the people. Instead of getting yes or no or a 5-point scale, we conduct interviews. So, the inputs which we receive from the respondent, that is compiled and later carefully analyzed. Now, let us see the methodology. The third aspect is method. Here we have to use survey method or experimental method. When we use most commonly positivist stand. Survey, all of you know, we collect the data with schedules or questionnaires from the potential respondents. When we talk about experiment, we do perform certain experiments in a laboratory and we note down the results. And the second approach here is case study. Case study is conducting a detailed investigation on a particular case or a particular organization's performance. Then comes action research, that is normally connected with the society or the day-to-day issues. Grounded theory, this is another method of conducting the study. We will be discussing it in detail in the coming sessions. Then comes ethnography and archival research. So, the third level is which is the right method that you can choose. I hope you are clear with it. Now, we will go into the next phase. So, we have three methods that we use, that is mono method, and second one is multi method, and the third one is mixed method. So, in general, when we attend conferences or when students make assignments, we find mono method is used very commonly. As the term indicates, a single mechanism. That means I use survey and I collect the data. What is multi method? More than one method of data collection or more than one method of analysis is applied here. For example, I conduct interviews. I collect the information directly from the respondent in the form of interview. I note down what they say and later I distribute a questionnaire with the same respondents. Then I collect the information. So, then I compile it. We can say this is a multi-method, or in different probes, different kind of probing, different approaches that we can use. And the mixed method means data which are qualitative and quantitative in nature. We compile it and we have to do a process called triangulation. Triangulating means the information that we get from qualitative inquiry and quantitative inquiry, synergizing results. What is the synthesis out of it? Both of them converge into one direction. So, that is what mixed method is. So, deciding upon appropriate strategy here means deciding upon the method. Next comes the time horizon of data collection. See, in research, we use two kind of data collection methods. One is single shot, that is cross sectional, and the second approach is longitudinal studies. Say for example, cross sectional, we go to the field, collect the information one time, but when we come to longitudinal, at a particular stretch we collect the information. Say for example, in many researches, the student, they go to the field, collect the data, and with that they build up their thesis. But when you talk about longitudinal research, the phenomena has to be observed for quite long time, maybe for a year or more than that. In humanities subject, some occasions we find the subject may be observed for more than 5 years or 10 years, what change is happening in the ground. So, we can have a better understanding of that. But for the purpose of PhD, a student cannot spend 5 years or 10 years observing a particular phenomena. For the need of degree, they complete the work quickly. Now, some key points related to data collection. In terms of data collection, we have questionnaire based surveys. Now, you might be getting online questionnaires too. Normally, research scholars who are part of different WhatsApp group, every day you may get a request. I am conducting a study on this topic. Kindly fill up the questionnaire. So, this is a new strategy used by research scholars. And when we look into the normal process, that means the researcher goes to the field with a printed questionnaire, distribute it and fill it, return back, and they do the analysis. So, this kind of information is primary data collection. So, your research is, what is the source of your research information? It's a primary data source or secondary, that you have to decide here. For primary information, the researcher is collecting the data from the field directly and it is not used in any other place. Secondary information means the data is already collected by some agencies or maybe like government, and we are using it for our research purpose. So, decide upon which strategy or which method is required for your research. Then appropriate method that you are following, qualitative or quantitative. If you are using qualitative, the mechanism is different, and if you are using quantitative, the process is different. So, you have to, if you are good with the statistics, if your analytical skills are strong, I advise you to go with quantitative studies because you like that. Analyzing, getting the results, matching the results and proving the hypothesis. That is the process involved with the quantitative studies. When we talk about the qualitative research, it is more into the corpus of information. The next aspect here involves sampling process. So, again we will study sampling in detail in the coming unit, but to brief you, we have two types of sampling, probability sampling and non-probability sampling. So, you have to decide upon that. Once you are clear with the kind of study that you are conducting, qualitative, quantitative or mixed, and number two, the tools that you are using to collect the information, it's a primary data source or secondary data source, questionnaires, interviews. So, most of the problems will be resolved from here. In the next aspect is who are involved in data collection. 2 points you have to note here. One is the enumerator who collect the data, normally the researcher. You are the researcher here, imagine. You go to the field and collect the data, or you employ somebody, maybe your friend, or you hire somebody, they collect the information. And the second aspect is the respondent. So, the target respondent, are they able to give you the insights? The respondent fill up the questionnaires appropriately? This matters. The next aspect is analysis tools. See, when you enter into research, you should also know about a number of tools are available that can be used for analysis, whether it is for qualitative studies or quantitative studies. So, it is up to you which tool that you are comfortable with. And last is the scheme of analysis here. The scheme of analysis means how to relate variables in a questionnaire to get the right answer. So, when we study research methodology, one of the area which we feel difficult for the students is they design the questionnaire in advance, and when they come back for analysis, we fail to connect certain variables with certain questions. So, this matters a lot. Research strategy is all about how you are proceeding with the research. Here, when we decide a particular topic, we should understand that that topic is already popular or explored. It is advisable to use a topic which is popular but unexplored. And here, next one is the strategy of evaluation or the assessment process. So, the strategy of assessment, the way you do analysis and the way you observe the phenomena and how you evaluate it. Or the next aspect is you want to compare certain phenomena. So, two cases you have to compare, whether you want to go ahead with the comparison, that is what this particular point mean. Or you want to identify patterns which are common or patterns which are different. So, pattern identification can be one of your research strategy. And the next aspect is identification of relationships. So, in most of the quantitative studies, we find a causal relationship, the relationship between two variables. So, here this could be a potential research strategy for a researcher. And the unit of study. Unit of study means micro level or macro level. Micro means smaller units, macro means higher units. So, if a researcher is going to study a small unit, that is advisable, but at the same time we should understand the generalizability of the study. And the last one is the validity of the findings, whether the society, research community in general are going to accept your findings. So, when we look in totality, what we understand is, for a researcher is concerned, for PhD degree or submission of your master dissertation or undergraduate dissertation, you should understand what is the popular topic or what topic that you can work on, your area of interest. Here the summary of the research strategy is, we have to understand whether your research is going to provide new insights on an unexplored area, that is number one. Number two, whether your research is an assessment of potentials or you can say evaluation of the scope. Number three, whether you are going to compare a phenomena or you want to describe the development. Identification of similarities or differences, we call pattern identification. Validation of relationships, normally it happens with statistical analysis and model testing. And next, the unit of study that you are working on, micro level or macro level. And the last, the validity of your findings. Now, let me connect it with some examples from tourism. So, tourism and hospitality subjects, lot of researches are happening, and in this, let me take the area of cultural tourism studies. Cultural tourism is an interdisciplinary area. People who study geography as a core subject in graduation or post-graduation, even in PhD, they also study the cultural dimensions, and people who are coming from exclusively cultural studies background, from liberal arts or humanities, they also take up cultural studies or cultural tourism, or even those students who are studying the pure discipline tourism management. So now the question arises, what is the new insight which you can suggest? So now, being the researcher, my position is I want to understand how tourism is perceived by residents, how resident community is impacted culturally. So is my purpose to build a theory? Then I have to think what approach is suitable. I am looking forward for qualitative study. So in qualitative study, the data collection method would be interviews, observations or focus group. Then comes how I am going to conduct the study. It's a micro level or macro level, because that is also important. There are several communities or there would be societies. So this has to be defined upon. Identifying the pattern and identifying the differences. If I am identifying the similarity, that is my purpose, or I want to highlight the differences. So this is a proposed like example which I suggested for you to make the subject understandable. So what are the issues? This is the last part of this particular session, and here we will realize that there are several issues related to research design. The first thing is philosophical perspective. We get confused with often reality. So what is reality? For a researcher is concerned, his purpose is to complete his thesis and he has to submit his synopsis. So he would be focusing more on research questions. So the individual ultimately may not be in a condition to identify the philosophical aspect of his research or her research. So the first area is identifying the philosophical background, that reality matters. And second, the established procedures, we have seen the methods used in research. So whether this will bring out the outcome, do we get the outcome from this study? And next aspect is how we can ensure that the results of our study is valid. One of the most difficult part of any research is the validity aspect. When you attend an interview, the interviewers may ask, the importance of your research. And when you present the findings, there will be several cross questioning. So one of the question you can expect is the validity of your findings. And next comes the values and ethics the researchers stand on certain issues which we commonly see in today's world. So research value and ethics is also important. And finally, when we talk the reliable techniques, data collection techniques, see Qualtrics or Amazon, mTurk, there are several such agencies which are collecting data for researchers' benefit. When we buy data, whether this will really reflect the phenomena that we are studying, this is a question. So the reliability of the data and the reliability of the technique is also important. So to conclude, research design gives you a particular approach to conduct the study. And then we have seen the 6 layers of Saunders model, that is research onion. We started from philosophy and we have seen the paradigms, we have seen the methods, and it ends with the data collection. If you are clear, if you can specify this, your research design work is much easier. And finally, when you submit your proposal, the supervisor or the teachers who evaluate your proposal, they will find it impressive and your work will be rewarded. So research design, I hope you are clear with this lecture, and if you have any doubts, you can write to me, or in the coming sessions when we go ahead with the methods in detail, you will have more clarity on research design and framework. So with this, we conclude here. Thank you.